listen close, this time shine. Fireside chat is here with insights divine. Dr. Perrodin leads the way, sharing stories we can't delay. Special education's the key. Let's answer this dirty
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Week 7 Fireside Chat for Educational Leadership 655, Pupil Services and Non-Discrimination with Viterbo University in La Crosse, Wisconsin. This week begins on Monday, March 3rd, and concludes on Sunday, March 9th, 2025. And this is the final countdown. Yes, this is the final Fireside Chat for this course. And then the research module begins on March 10th. A recap. You assembled terrific learning team plans for Bruce. So thank you very much for all of the effort that you put into those plans. I appreciate it that you were overt, including photos and images. Have people hold an EpiPen during a training, and throughout your plans, you replaced the word should with the word must. Big difference, right? This person should administer the EpiPen to Bruce. This person must administer the EpiPen to Bruce. Call 911 if you administer the EpiPen, even if the parents do not want you to call 911. If they say, no, call me, I will come and pick up Bruce and I will take him to the doctor. You cannot do that. You can call 911 and then call the parent, and the parent and EMS, if they're there at the same time, can make a decision on the student's care, but you must still call EMS. Proactive measures to mitigate potential bullying and discrimination. Nice job with that. You want students to quickly find an adult. That was in all of your plans. And right, you don't want kids to be scared and to kind of freak out if Bruce is having a reaction. Very smart interactions with your food service and library media staff. Be an ally with your food service director to limit the frequency of changes of suppliers in a constant effort to save costs. So that happens a lot in schools. 1 month, the supplier might be Cisco for applesauce. The next month, it's US Blue, and then it's another provider. It's kind of bid out constantly. Well, when that happens, the menus change, right? And the amount of sugar, the amount of MSG, and then also the potential exposure to various peanuts or nut allergens get introduced into that mix. So as possible with your director of food service to try to get some continuity in that food plan. Increase your expectations for the role of the library media specialist in obtaining books and coordinating activities to promote allergy awareness. This person should have a substantial role in Bruce's plan and should be going into the classrooms and presenting the books. A number of you, again, highlighted that. Thank you. The Fantasticans. They added a link in their plan, and that link went to a school website that directs parents to a dynamic school menu, allowing them to view both the menu items and the ingredients. And I had never seen that before. That's extremely clever, and I appreciate that that was added by the Fantasticans. Bruce's current district cannot legally re-release any medical records to you that the district obtained from third-party providers with a release of information. So your school nurse will need to work quickly with Bruce's parents to obtain a signed release of information and secure Bruce's allergy reports and recommendations from his medical providers. Again, and if Bruce leaves your district, you cannot re-release the medical records that were provided to you by the third-party medical provider. You can make the parent aware, hey, let the other district know so they can contact the physician. You can put a note in the file saying there are medical records. Please work with the parent to obtain those, but you cannot re-release medical records that have been released to you. You will always pair a health plan with an IEP or a 504. And the reason for that is to introduce due process rights. It was about 15 years ago in the state where an individual health plan kind of could stand on its own And that changed. Would hear a lot at conferences, attorneys present, emphasizing to pair that with the IEP or a 504, again, which you emphasized in your plans. And food service will be, again, your ally in providing that list of safe snacks for the classroom, right? You can go on the internet and find hundreds of lists, but where are they from? Who's vetted them? How current are they versus meeting with your director of food service or even your nurse to obtain a current and valid list that you can send home to parents? Most parents will happily comply with this if they just understand what their role is. If your district contracts for its transportation services, the contractor might not state the drivers must be trained and administer the EpiPen. So you need to understand that and be an advocate for that. And if the contract, the request for proposal goes out again for busing, that you ensure that within that proposal is a condition that the bus driver would administer the EpiPen and then contact 911. Wisconsin state law, Wisconsin state statute 118.2925. Schools may acquire and maintain a supply of EpiPens. So again, contacting your health insurance provider for your district, local pharmacies, civic organizations, and so forth to make donations of EpiPens. Again, I think it's important to have a photo of Bruce in his allergy emergency plan in the subfolder, to take Bruce to the kitchen and allow Bruce to interact face-to-face with the kitchen staff just so they have that authentic awareness of who Bruce is. So I know there are confidentiality issues some of you brought up. I would go to the side of saying I think it's in the best interest of Bruce to have his image available to select people who are going to interact with him. There's also this thing called RAST scores, R-A-S-T, and it's radio allergosorbent test. Or basically, you might have heard about this, or you might have went through this yourself, trying to find out what you're allergic to. So you have different little dabs of things, and then see if your skin becomes red or a rash. So these tests try to identify what someone is allergic to. And there's an interesting thing with RAST scores. Now, not presenting this as a physician, but a physician did share this with me and said, Dave, we could have a student who for 3 or 4 years has a mild or moderate reaction to, for example, shellfish. And then the next time they have shellfish, they have the most severe reaction possible. So to look at a student with an allergy and to kind of look at a pattern of how they respond, that's not a confident predictor of how they will respond to the next time they're exposed to that allergen, just to underscore that point. And then also, Bruce is at an age where he might be his quote-unquote own person. And what that means is, can Bruce carry his EpiPen? Could he administer his EpiPen? We run into this with students with emergency inhalers, for example, with asthma, or needing an insulin injection. So what usually happens then, your school nurse has a protocol for this, and typically the student has to demonstrate a number of times, usually like 3 times, that they know how to do this, right? Just kind of go through all the motions except, administering that EpiPen. And then Bruce would be considered to be his own person, and Bruce would also then be able to carry an EpiPen and be able to self-administer. Might be a little bit young right now, but that would certainly be something to discuss at his IEP. And students his age is typically when those discussions start to happen, which is early elementary school. This week in class, school safety. Yes, school safety. The Director of Pupil Services has an important role in maintaining school safety for instruction and activities, and that everybody participates. So sometimes there's nobody else who is going to be the advocate for a student with a disability or an English language learner outside of you as the Pupil Services Director, of why it's important for the student to participate in instruction and drills and activities. The K-12 counseling scope and sequence document. So you were able to see that this week. And again, I would look at adding headings across the top and expanding that out. And one could be social media and online presence awareness, and what we're doing at kindergarten, first grade, second, third, all the way through 12, right? And to expand that out and revisit that 4 times a year. Have it a dynamic document. Share that with your Board of Education. You produced outstanding questions for your school attorney. I'm impressed, keen and very thoughtful. What I had was a red covered notebook in my desk. It was in my left-hand drawer, and I would open it up and I would write down questions that I wanted to make sure I asked the attorney, but questions I also knew weren't going to be very frequently asked. One of those questions specifically was, what if a parent brings a student to school and the student is a runner, and the parent, for example, pulls up to the driveway of the school, but not necessarily to the front door, and the student just bolts, right? Exits out any of the doors of the SUV, right? He's gone. And so what does that look like for a plan of escorting a student safely into a building, especially when the school is located in a very busy, high traffic area? So that was a question that I had. And then, of course, there were others. So wanted to make sure brought those forward. I would recommend that you do the same thing. It is money well spent to assemble those questions. And I would say no more than 10, typically in the range of 5 to 7, and meet with your superintendent, be talking with your principals, and then talk with your school attorney and have your attorney research those questions and give a position on those. And then the attorney hopefully would be the one presenting those at a school in service. Custody issues, that's frequent. One time I had a staff member who believed the school should be intervening on her behalf for a parent who was making statements about her teaching skills on his blog. And so the teacher was saying, you got to do something. It's a violation of my privacy. It interferes with teaching. And so we looked at it and then consulted with the attorney. And in that specific circumstance, the attorney said there was nothing that the school could do because this was a parent's freedom of speech. There wasn't any real targeted harassment. It was more opinion. There weren't any threats. But yet, certainly I could see as a recipient of the context of these blog posts that it would be very unsettling and could make it difficult. So that actually did happen a few times, and it was helpful for the attorney to share. For example, if you're mentioned in online posts and things like that, like where does it fall for harassment and bullying and kind of how to determine that line. So again, found that helpful. Revisit deepfakes and predator phishing. So I have this video about a white hat hacker, and I'm going to show it. So here it is.
So basically what you're doing is you're taking a photo of me. It's going to do the facial recognition and find every image on the internet that has my face in it, whether I'm tagged in it or not.
Yes.
Like it's strict. You could find my face in the middle of the Super Bowl stadium.
As long as it's on the internet. Let me take a picture and send it to myself. And you can see, it's just a picture that this has never been on the internet, right?
That is a really good looking man right there.
Amazing. You can go through these and see if there's anything that you don't want on there or not. But remember, I used a picture that was never on the internet to find those photos of you. So it measured your face, it measured 120 points on your face, associated a picture that's never touched the internet with you.
Okay, from that video, just an image of you with all these multiple points on your face can be then cross-referenced against a database of potentially hundreds of or thousands or hundreds of thousands of pictures of you. And it might be a picture where you're in the background, or it could be from a regular surveillance video as you're walking in and out of a store, right? So it is amazing how much of that information is out there. And then if it is obtained by people, they can coordinate what your schedule is, your activities, your interest, and really put this mosaic together, which can be pretty frightening. I had a conversation with a high school freshman this week and specifically asked him, what would be impactful? What would make you listen and take to heart messages about social media and online safety? And he was pretty direct. And I said, just tell me straight out. He said, listening from the adults, yes, I get what they're trying to say. But again, they don't really see it the way that they don't interact with the internet the way that kids do. So we were talking more, and I just said, what might work? And here's what he said. If we had a professional development session where it's a group of students, right, middle school or high school students, and we were shown 3 social media profiles, and we had to determine if it was either authentic or if it was fake, or if there was something kind of not right about it, like that sixth sense. Could we do it? And I was like, wow, that is amazing. I think, yeah, right on. And he said, the other thing is, how about a 60-second interaction where it's something where you're watching a thread between 2 parties, right? Like one is a student and one is somebody else unknown. And then, is this a safe interaction? Is this not a safe interaction? What makes it not safe? What makes it safe? Is there something in here that gives it an odd feel that, you would want to bring an adult into this to look this over? So it's those types of things that nobody does. And that's why I talked to him and shared and said, nobody does this. And you could do this. You could work with your peers and you could put this together through like a PBIS effort. And this would be amazing. And it could be shared statewide. And that's the catalyst of how these things start to happen. So just think about that. There's a big difference in what I described, where it's, kind of the adults giving out the information and students generating information and having students look at these profiles and look at these interactions happening. And then again, saying, this feels okay. This doesn't feel right. Here's some indicators. Wow. Big difference there. Contemporary developments. The Wisconsin Assembly approves a bill that would ban cell phones in classrooms. So we'll see where this goes. But as a pupil services director, would you make an exception for students with severe anxiety who will not participate in school without access to their phone? And could you do that? Because again, this would be state law. And I think that's the push, right, is to make it state law, which then the schools don't have to be, quote unquote, the bad guy on this. They're just having policy which follows state law. How about assistive technology that is built into phones, voice to text, augmentative communication? Would you substitute a different phone instead of the student's native device during the school day? And also the intersection of school safety and access to phones. If there's an intruder in the building and students having a phone and not having a phone. So there's a lot to be hashed out with this yet, but understand your position because your Board of Education is likely to ask you to inform them on this kind of contemporary matter. Week 7 shout outs. Amy wrote about Professor Thundercloud's resources. She wrote, I was impressed by Professor Thundercloud's resources discussing race and culture. Race and culture tend to be contentious topics to speak about, specifically in districts that are not racially or culturally diverse. As a pupil services director, I find it hard to balance awareness, interest, and embracing race, culture, and gender in our schools when someone of our Board of Education, our staff, our students, or community members have different views on these topics. So I appreciate that, Amy, and your very thoughtful consideration of Professor Thundercloud's cultural education activities. I deeply value her work, and Wisconsin has a complex and often overlooked history regarding Native American communities. So I'm going to kind of go into that area right now, both in school curricula and also in public education. So I recall treaty beer being sold in northern Wisconsin in the 1980s to protest Indian treaty rights. More recently, a student in this course, an administrator at a tribal school, shared how community members threw rocks at tribal fishing boats, like we're talking just in the last couple of years. As a UW-Stevens Point student back in the day, yes, I was very aware of Schmeickel Reserve, which was on the north side of campus, and its well-preserved wagon trail ruts. but I was completely unaware that a nearby part of the campus, actually Old Main, the first building on campus, was built atop Indian burials. The Indian burials occurred in the 1860s, and that area was later used by the city of Stevens Point as a garbage dump. So it was well documented in the 1930s and going forward that this burial area existed. Yet nothing was acknowledged until 2020 when signage went up, and more recently a mural to acknowledge that these buildings are on top of a burial site. In my role as a pupil services director, I encourage school counselors to facilitate meaningful activities during Native American Heritage Month in November, fostering awareness and dialogue. In my opinion, this area is under-addressed. Adam wrote, and this would be his legal question for the lawyer: if parents of a child with many different needs refuse services for their child, but the child will not be safe in the building without any accommodations, what legal precautions should we take, or what services would we be able to provide within the law? Oh, wow. That is a great question, because a parent can revoke consent at any time, and then you still have the student enrolled, right? So how do you provide services to that student? I recently learned that a parent revoked consent for his son to continue receiving special education services. So something I just became aware of, even though those services were focused on behavioral needs. And the school right now is working to support him the best that they can and manage periodic behavioral kind of meltdowns without the IEP supports. And they're asking questions: can the child have access to the sensory room and kind of the sensory protocol that the child was using before that was kind of arranged by the IEP? It was more than just a visit to a room. There was kind of a protocol and process that went with it. So that is a terrific question. And there were some other questions posted in class about what if virtual then is on the table. Where does that fit into this as a district, saying this is really the only way we can support the student, because in this setting, because the parent again has not supported the services, what options does the school have? So it's a great question for your school attorney. Corey reflected on my school safety content, and she wrote, a training that was very powerful. And I will never forget was an intruder training that we did on an in-service day, and then later with students in the building, that involved the local law enforcement that used fake hostages and blanks in their guns. Those were very emotional experiences for me. Wow. First, I'm sorry that you had to go through that, Corey. That's not the way that these drills and exercises should be conducted. The fact that the training remains emotional for you years later highlights that this was a trauma inducing event, right? And likely for other participants. One of my students in a class a few years ago, it was during in-service week, and they said, we were all told to wear denim tomorrow. What does that mean? I said, it means someone's going to shoot you with a pellet gun during a training. That's what it means, and that's exactly what happened. As I stated in School of Airs in my PBS special, we never hear of a school professional development event with staff and students to simulate a tornado. So you put all the kids in the hallway and you fire up a barn fan and you throw gravel in it, and it's like, that's what a tornado is like. So nobody does that, right? So why do we go to these graphic extents with these intruder activities? I also personally know a family with children on the autism spectrum who were subjected to hyper-realistic school safety drills, so terrifying and dysregulating that their parents were never able to reintegrate them into a brick-and-mortar school. And that, folks, was 7 years ago. And to this day, the children will not enter. They will not even go up the steps. When the parents tried to bring them back to school after meeting with a counselor and having a reintegration plan, the students physically became ill, and they would grab onto the car seats and they wouldn't leave the car. And when they tried another school, the same reaction. So to this day, it is still impacting this family. Becky reflected on her experiences with school safety. Locks, lights out of sight. Students don't take it seriously. Working with our SRO to create drills that are more lifelike, not hyper-realistic, yet emphasize situational awareness. So hearing a noise that doesn't make sense, what do I do? So Becky, right on. And, I was thinking about this. It's both concerning and frustrating to see students not taking safety drills seriously. I believe this stems from several factors, including drill fatigue, a lack of adult modeling, right? If the adults aren't fully vested into the drill, the students are going to pick up on that. And students having little or no input in the process. When I worked at the Wisconsin School for the Blind, I led school safety efforts with the full support of the facility administrator. And after any type of drill, I convened a focus group of 4 to 6 students and typically 1 or 2 staff members. We met for one class period, which was 40 minutes the day following the drill. And I asked specific and open-ended questions. Did you hear the alert? Now, we had a building. It's a large campus. Parts of it are very old. And sometimes, depending upon where you are at or what you're doing, you might not be able to hear the alert. What's happening around you when the drill is going on? What's something you want to know about the drill? If there's a student who started school here next week, I love this question. What do they need to know about our safety drills and safety practices? And the kids will tell you a lot of things that you weren't even thinking. I then sent a concise drill summary to all staff. So I got that email out usually within a business day of when we had the drill. Not later than that. It's very important to get a concise email out saying, hey, here were some observations we had from the drill. We met with a focus group, and here were some things that they said. So kind of identify also if there's anything that's murky that we're going to be looking into and clarifying. So that was important, and to indicate, hey, if you have any suggestions or any questions, contact me. In School of Errors, I wrote about a 2-alarm fire that broke out at the School for the Blind just as lunch was beginning on a Friday. Friday is also the day when the kids go home, and some of them actually get on a plane and fly home, so it gets pretty busy toward the latter half of the day. And kids were in hallways, but as the fire alarm was sounding, kids and staff safely exited the building. They found their paved areas. And one of the things that stuck with me was that we convened a couple groups after that to talk with students and staff. And one student raised her hand and she said, Mr. Perrodin, one thing I wish I would have known was we heard more fire trucks coming. We could feel the rumbling, right? The pavement is rumbling and the big trucks are coming down. And she said, I wish I would have known, like someone told me what was happening. Like, is the building, like more parts of it, or is it burning? Is it to the dorms? What is happening? And actually it was a localized fire, but they had to open up part of a roof to check things out. And I said, that's really good, because once you were out, you could hear a lot of commotion going on, a lot of things being moved around and so forth, and no one was giving you an update. Thank you very much. Wouldn't have ever got that from a survey. Week 7 in Moodle. This is your final week of discussion questions. If you're not caught up with discussion questions, make sure you complete them by the end of week 7. And also your substantive posts, make sure those are all done by the end of week 7. Disability self-advocacy. You're going to meet a student from Toma, a student who attended the Wisconsin School for the Blind, a student and also staff member from the Wisconsin School for the Blind. They will talk about their own disability. Imagine this expanded to students with anxiety or identifying as LGBTQ. How might this personal self-advocacy and education benefit the student and the school? And what are potential drawbacks to these types of student-led activities? An immediate consideration would be the student and family are comfortable with sharing personal information that would otherwise be protected by HIPAA. Another concern is that one person does not become the stereotype of a group. Finally, disability simulation activities, such as having ambulatory people use a wheelchair to go through a lunch line or weave around obstacles in a gym, has been criticized by some as giving a false impression of what it is like to sit in a wheelchair for hours a day. Similar kind of events have been happening with planned homeless nights, where students live in boxes or tents for a day outside of the school, but it typically is right in a very protected area, and that is to simulate an experience of homelessness So again, looking at that from different perspectives of trying to introduce increased awareness, but also you are not authentically representing a situation that someone who's homeless, right, and would be living outside would authentically encounter. Disability awareness YouTube shorts. So I've shared some in this class, and I think these are amazing. And there are a number of followers of the creators of this content. And that's something we wouldn't have seen before, right? First of all, the platform existed, and now we're having some of these creators. For example, a very popular young lady, her name is Chrissy, and she's a college student. She talks about being deaf. And she's also a publisher, a movie producer. So
what is that? Is it like attached to your skin? You take it off?
It is amazing to watch her videos. And then a girl with a bionic arm. And one of the things that she points out with her bionic arm is like just how she loves that it is kind of futuristic and she can kind of customize it out with different designs and decals and things. And
get ready with me as I answer frequently asked questions about my bionic arms. People have a lot of questions about them, so let's get into it. So I've been wearing prosthetics ever since the age of literally like 1 or 2. The first ones I went for, like most people do it with the arms on the NHS. I live in England, so we are so lucky to have the NHS. I'll never stand at the NHS because they literally saved my life at the end of the day. But as far as prosthetics went, they weren't really for me. I'll attach a picture of what it sort of looked like. As you can see, it didn't really look like a hand. It was tied together by elastic bands. Ignore my mess in the background. The way it operated was like body power. I would move sort of my upper body, my shoulders, and it would pull on strings, which would pull on the elastic bands. I didn't really get on with this prosthetic. I just associated it more as like a weapon than a hand. Like I used to chase my sisters around with it, but like other than that, I couldn't really adopt it as my own. I couldn't actually operate it because I was 2 trying to like figure out how to have bodily coordination. But after that, the option was to go private, and that's what I did.
I think this is doing a lot to remove stigmas and preconceived, perceptions of disabilities. So some really amazing stuff is happening to kind of break down barriers and just add awareness. So I'm really amazed by that. We saw it maybe like 15 years ago when the first ear molds were coming in, especially for students with hearing loss, and they would have different colors. So, hey, do you want like a swirly color or a red or blue ear mold? And so you could see that. Upload your FEMA course certificate by March 8th. And again, weeks 6 and 7 are combined in the syllabus. I will post in Moodle by the middle of March your dates where you can sign up for your phone call final. If you don't want to do the phone call final, please email me and say, hey, I'm going to do the paper, and then, submit the paper by the last day of class. Otherwise, those phone call finals will be completed before the last day of class. So we are in the home stretch here, and I do have some parting words. Okay, this is our last Fireside Chat. Advance fearlessly. Don't let the perception of losing sunk cost hold you back from making the right decisions, right? Sunk cost. I think one of the examples of that would be a school that is unwilling to change its school schedule because, right, we've got everything aligned to this and we've put so much time into this over the year and the buses and everybody's used to it. And it's like, well, okay, but if this isn't best serving your students, you need to move on from that, right? So it is this kind of sunk cost. So don't be afraid to move on from sunk cost. Your growth as a leader depends on looking forward, not being anchored to the past. Remember, as a leader, you are always being observed. I think this is very important. Your tone, your cues, your energy are recognized by everyone around you. And the last point, and the longer I do this, as both an instructor and working with schools, I really think this is probably the most important of all, right? A kind word, a compliment, or even a simple smile can completely change someone's day. Never underestimate the power of small gestures. And if that becomes something you're cognizant of, it just has this effect that will ripple. And somebody will come back to you at some point and say, you know what, I was a little bit down in this new co-teaching lesson and it took a while to get things going, and you came in and you said, hey, like I liked your energy, and this student really was excited about this point. So, I'm excited to see where things are going, and thanks for taking this on. And wow, like that just changed my whole day. It went from, just kind of clouds to being like, whoa, somebody I value recognizes this and is seeing the potential in this. So that's the thing, right? We all have days which can be challenging, and especially in administration. So working with your peers and then, with your staff and your students, those compliments go a long way. And the thing with the compliment bucket is it's never ending. You can keep pulling compliments out of the compliment bucket. So keep doing that. Everybody, this has been an awesome class. We're in the home stretch. Make sure that you get those posts done. That is very important. And then, again, this is the final Fireside Chat for Educational Leadership 655, People Services and Non-Discrimination. Dr. David P. Perrodin. Take care.